They told people it was their patriotic duty. They said buying war bonds would help win the war. They promised it was safe. What they didn't say was that you would never truly get your real money back. A war bond wasn't just a financial tool. It was one of the smartest psychological tricks ever. Created. A way to turn ordinary citizens into lenders, to turn loyalty into money, and patriotism into profit, just not your profit. Welcome to the Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. This is the story of how governments learned to sell war as an investment, and how normal people, trying to do the right thing, ended up funding the world's first global financial scam. The year was 1914. Europe was falling into chaos, and the governments leading millions into war discovered something dangerous. They were running out of money. Modern war was far more expensive than anyone imagined. World War I wasn't knights and glory. It was steel, fuel, bullets, machines, the industrialization of death. Every shell had a price. Every tank was like a mortgage. Britain, France, Germany all saw their gold reserves disappearing faster than soldiers on the battlefield. So governments turned to something new. Not soldiers, not colonies, citizens. Before this, normal people rarely dealt with government debt. Bonds were only for bankers and elites. But when war costs exploded, politicians had two choices: raise taxes and risk, revolt, or convince people to want to lend them money. The solution they created was both brilliant and manipulative. They blended debt with patriotism. British posters showed soldiers staring with serious eyes. If you cannot fight, finance. Germany launched its own war loan campaigns. People lined up outside banks, thinking they were buying victory. In America, it became a full national show. Posters shouted, "Buy Liberty bonds." From movie stars to preachers, everyone pushed the message. Bands marched in the streets. Children were told their small savings helped their fathers fight. The message was simple. If you love your country, you will lend it money. But the truth was hidden. Liberty bonds were basically IOUs, the government promising to pay citizens back later. But they didn't promise to protect your money from inflation. And when the war ended, inflation exploded. Prices nearly doubled. A $100 bond could suddenly buy only $50 worth of goods. People got their money back, but lost their wealth. The same thing happened in Britain. The famous 1917 war loan paid interest, but inflation destroyed most of its real value. Germany was even worse. Hyperinflation wiped out savings completely. Patriotic citizens became poor overnight, not because their armies lost, but because the math didn't lie. War bonds were never meant to enrich the public. They kept the war machine running. Buying a bond didn't buy victory. It bought more time for governments. Governments knew exactly what they were doing. These bond campaigns weren't only about money, they were propaganda. They mixed morality with money so perfectly that questioning the investment looked like questioning your loyalty. Posters didn't talk about interest rates. They talked about heroes. Buying a bond wasn't financial, it was emotional. The scam wasn't in the numbers. It was in the story. Citizens thought they were investing in the nation, but the nation was actually investing in their emotions. Britain issued over £6 billion in war bonds. The U.S. raised more than $20 billion, half the cost of the war. The campaign worked so well that by 1918, the modern bond market was born, not for elites, but for the entire nation. The message was simple. Buying bonds wasn't debt, it was honor. But honor doesn't protect your money. After the war, governments were drowning in IOUs they couldn't repay. But they couldn't admit it. So Britain converted short-term war loans into long-term bonds with no end date. Consols. Families received tiny payments for decades, not realizing inflation had already destroyed their original investment. The war ended, but the debt lived for almost 100 years. Britain finally paid off its world. War bonds in 2015. In the U.S., Liberty bonds were slowly absorbed into the national debt system, the system we still use today. What started as a temporary wartime solution became the foundation of modern government, finance. The world discovered a new kind of power, the power to borrow endlessly. War bonds weren't only about paying for war. They normalized the idea that governments can borrow forever if the people believe it's for a good cause. And that's when the scam became genius. The marriage of patriotism and debt became one of history's strongest alliances. People didn't only fight for their country anymore, they financed it. By World War II, governments didn't need new tricks. They repeated the old ones now, with Hollywood. Stars sold bonds. Cartoons promoted savings. Even Bugs Bunny told Americans to buy bonds. Once again, inflation erased the real returns. But nobody cared. It had become habit. Borrowing wasn't shameful. It was patriotic. Governments discovered the safest lender. It wasn't a bank. It was a loyal citizen. And once people believed that, the global financial system changed forever. After 1945, old empires collapsed. One new empire rose. The United States, built not on land but on credit. The U.S. Treasury market became the world's safe asset. Debt itself became wealth. Today's economy, from mortgages to mutual funds, is built on the same idea. Trust the debt. Cold War? By savings bonds. 9/11? By treasuries. Pandemic? Stimulus now, debt later. Different crises, same method. Every campaign begins with motion, fear, pride, duty, and ends with more government, borrowing. The genius of the original war bond was simple. It mixed saving with obedience. Buying one was not just financial. It was a sign of loyalty. Governments learned that as long as people believe, the numbers don't matter. The soldier and the bondholder became the same, loyal, expendable, and convinced they were helping a noble cause. Modern bonds have new names: green bonds, recovery bonds, defense bills, but the mechanism is unchanged. Governments borrow with your money and sell it to you as moral duty. Instead of posters, there are economists on TV. Instead of flags, there are slogans like sustainability. The message hasn't changed. Give us your future to protect the present. The war never ends. It simply changes shape. War on terror, war on poverty, war on climate, war on recession. You're not just a citizen anymore. You're collateral. Before 1914, people trusted gold. After 1918, they trusted the state. The war changed human psychology forever. In every crisis, people are taught that saving the system is the same as saving themselves. That belief keeps everything running. War bonds work too well. They taught governments that borrowing has no limits, as long as the public believes the promises. From 1917 trenches to 2025 spreadsheets, the pattern is the same. If people believe, the money is endless. But belief has a cost: inflation, stagnation, inequality. When a government learns it can borrow from tomorrow, it becomes careless with today. A century later, the world still runs on war bonds. We just call them by different names. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.